updated yet.
Okay. So
Sorry
first of all,
about
again, good morning. I'm joined by several of my colleagues, but I'm Brian Beal, the Director of Enrollment at Brimmer and May. It's great to see so many people here this morning. I hope at some point that we will be able to get back to Carroll to do this in person. We used to love doing that, and I think it's worked very well on Zoom. So, like a lot of things that have worked well on Zoom. This is certainly one of them, and for people's work schedules and daily schedules, it does sort of work well. But do miss driving out to Lincoln and seeing everybody in person. But it's great to see some familiar names on the screen here. I am joined by a few of my colleagues. We'll just run through some introductions really quickly. And while they're doing that, I'm going to locate this PowerPoint and share my screen with you at the same time. So, and we have a student joining us, an alum of Carroll joining right now as well. But with that said, I'm going to hand it over to Chad, who's the first person I'm seeing from Brimmer in my screen here. So I'll turn it over to Chad for a minute.
Hey everyone, I'm Chad Ajik, the Director of Upper School Admissions here at Brimmer. It's great to see some familiar names up on the Zoom screen. I've been touring several families from Carroll, so I'm very excited to be here and speak with you more about how we work with Carroll students who attend Brimmer. Thanks. I'll pass it off to Joshua Newdell.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. It's nice to see you here. My name's Josh Newdell, and I'm the head of the upper school at Brimmer. This is my 6th year in this position at Brimmer, and welcome. And Karen?
Hi, everybody. Karen Bernanke, Director of Academic Services in the middle and upper school. This is my 2nd year, and I'm thrilled to be here at Brimmer and working with the many students, including students who've attended Carroll. And I've been to Carroll before from other hats that I've worn in the past, and I love Carroll students and I love the program that they go through, and families have been really supportive. So happy to see you.
Great. And sorry, submitting a couple more people here. Karen, do you want to, is Theo still? I'm just trying to get this PowerPoint.
Theo is here. And he will come in whenever you want him to come in.
Theo, do you want to say hello? Just introduce yourself real quick.
Sure. Hi, my name's Theo. I go to Brimmer and May. I'm a senior this year, and I'm also a Carroll alum. I went to Carroll from 4th grade to 9th grade, and I came at Brimmer in 9th grade too.
Excellent. Thanks, Theo. All right. So what I'm going to do, and I'm thinking actually a last minute change. Sorry, Josh and Karen, but I'm going to push the admissions piece to the end. But before we do that, I'm just going to give a little bit of an overview. I'm sure there are some folks with varying levels of knowledge of Brimmer. Josh is going to fill you in on sort of all things program related. Karen is going to focus on all things sort of support. Theo can fill you in on the student experience and what it's like to be a student at Brimmer from all facets. But I just sort of give you some very basic information for those who do not know. Brimmer and May is an all-gender pre-K through 12 day school in Chestnut Hill. We actually straddle the Newton-Brookline border. We're part of both towns. Again, 400 students. We're right on the Green Line, sort of around the corner from Boston College. And we are, again, all day. We have a nice, for our student body comes from generally 60 to 65 different towns in the larger community, every neighborhood of Boston represented, which is always something that we sort of a nice little fact that we pride ourselves in. So students coming from sort of, all over the area, being on the T is incredibly convenient. We do offer 3 bus routes as well, one Metro West, one to West Roxbury and Rosendale, and another to downtown Boston and Brookline. But being on the Green Line, is certainly an accessible for many folks from different geographic regions. So, and about a third of our high school actually takes the T to school. Just a nice little sort of data around sort of how people get here. Realizing that folks at Carroll do represent towns, across the area as well. So with that, I will dig into the admissions piece later, but out of respect for Josh and Karen's time and Theo, I thought we could sort of move through the program here, and then if they need or want to sign off, we can kind of cover the admissions process, what's different this year, and Chad can chime in as well with me on that part if he's still able to, and answer any and all questions that you have as parents at that time related to the admissions process. So if that sounds good, I will share here and we'll just hop in and, oh, sorry, you probably can't see that, can you? Sorry, it's a shared presentation. Give me 2 seconds here. Hang on one sec. Karen, I probably have to be out of presentation mode, right?
I think so. Well,
hang on one second.
So I can get us started while you work.
Sorry, it's not liking that format. So bear with me 1 minute here.
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
Siri's talking. I mean, that's very interesting. I didn't know I had Siri.
Josh, the first slide was about.
Yeah, I have it.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to just start talking.
Okay, here we go, Josh. Sorry, here we go. Sorry, it didn't like the play mode for whatever reason. So is this where you'd like to start, Josh?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
So welcome. So I thought I would just start off by just giving you some of the basics around Brimmer and the schedule, and just sort of thinking about other questions that have come up from working with Carroll families in the past. And just to give you sort of the synopsis, all of this obviously can be found in the materials that we have online or in other places, but I just thought it'd be good to pull this out for you all. So just some schedule basics. And I do this because I know that in many ways, sort of like understanding that flow of the day can be really important for your students, is that we have a weekly block schedule currently where each class meets either 4 times or 3 times a week. The 3-time-a-week classes are more of our elective classes, and the class periods range from 40 minutes to 70 minutes. And every student has study halls or free periods during the course of the week. And so we have 9 blocks during the day. And typically students take about 7 different courses. So they have their 5 primary courses, their 5 core courses, and then they usually take 2 electives. That can be arts classes, they can be tech classes, they could be design classes that, they could take in additional academic classes they move through, but that's sort of like our typical schedule. And so what that means though is when they have 2 open blocks, two blocks that aren't being scheduled for classes, that they tend to end up with somewhere in the range of 6 to 8 different study halls or free periods during the week, which generally works out to having at least 1 free period every day for students that are working with that may be working to get some work done, getting ahead, maybe are looking for some extra support and going to some of our support areas. So 1 to 2 times a day, they typically have some type of availability to work with a teacher, a tutor, or go and visit our learning center as well. Typically we have students that take, we have a 4-year English requirement, a history requirement, that's 3 years. So most students are taking 4 years of a history class, a math requirement that is 3 years, and they have to go through at least Algebra 2, a science requirement of 3 years. It includes physics and biology, although, the majority of students also take chemistry, and then 3 consecutive years of a world language. We do offer a language waiver, which allows for a student that may have a disability in that area to be able to not take a world language, and they would take another class in that state. In 9th and 10th grade, we have our wellness classes. So in 9th grade, they take a wellness class that is really around academic wellness, physical wellness, and mental wellness, where they work with one of our teachers, and we have various people come in over the course of the year working with them. And that also includes Karen goes into that and talks to them about some organizational skills as well. Then 10th grade, the wellness program is really around healthy relationships. And so we currently are partnered with an organization called Impact Boston, which comes in and teaches the students about different types of scenarios, what healthy relationships look like, and how to de-escalate situations that may be sort of identified as potential abuse or things along those lines. And this year we actually added in a 4-hour self-defense workshop. So all of our 10th grade students will actually be getting those practical skills around self-defense too, which we're really excited about. And I would say that our parent body, when I emailed them about the healthy relationships curriculum the past 2 years, it may have been overwhelmingly like the most positive things that we've heard, just because of the sense of like, this is going to set their kids up to have skills that they're really going to need in the future. And then our college counseling, it's a little different than I think than a lot of other schools, is so starting in second semester of 11th grade, all of our students are assigned to a weekly college counseling class where we actually have a curriculum that takes them through the entire college counseling process, which allows these students to really go from developing a list and helping them work on their essays and their applications to then working them through the whole application process. So they have a weekly class, and on top of that, they actually meet with their college counselors very frequently and regularly around that, which is a tremendous resource that we have. And I think one of the benefits of being a school of our size is for a class size of around 40 to 45 students, we have 2 full-time college counselors. So that's really a caseload for them of around 20-ish or so students. And so that's a lot of personalized attention that those students are getting and families are able to have as they navigate through that process. And then just to give you a sense of some of the classes that we have, because this comes up a lot, for our visual arts, you can see the list there: drawing, painting, sculpture. It sort of runs the gamut all the way up to AP art in a few different forms. Our performing arts include our band, our choral group, Green Line, and then other options that we have. And then we really pride ourselves a lot on our innovation design courses. And this is another area that I think really separates Brimmer from a lot of other schools, is that our director of innovation design is actually someone that has a visual arts background as well. And so when we talk about STEAM at Brimmer, we really are authentically merging the idea of creativity with innovation in a really unique way. And I can say that this is actually my background. My former position, I was the director of educational innovation and was charged with building maker spaces and designing. And I've never seen somebody work the way in which Catherine Lee does, who is our director of innovation design at Brimmer. And it really is inspiring. And so we have some great classes that meet up there, including problem solving through design, fashion design. We have a digital fabrication in our maker space. A fun note about our problem solving through design is it's sort of run Shark Tank-esque, where they are solving a problem and designing a product. And we actually have students last year that applied for a patent for one of the designs they made in the space. And so it's currently being considered with the United States Patent Office. And we've partnered with a local law firm that is also working with the students on how to work through the patent process too. So if you have some budding entrepreneurs or inventors in your house, that would be a great class for them to take. And then the classes that we offer, the sports that we offer, you can see there. We offer soccer, cross country, basketball, curling, baseball, softball, lacrosse, tennis, and then we have a number of sort of fitness type of options too. And so all students are asked to do one season of a team sport. And we have a few different sort of ways in which they may be able to not do that depending on some of the things that they're in, but we do want we want their bodies to be physically active so that they can have healthy bodies as well. And that's a core part of who we are too. I think you can go to the next slide, Brian. Thank you. So just a few other pieces I just want to pull out. So we have a few signature programs at Brimmer, and what you'll see is when you're looking through, we have a creative arts diploma, a global studies diploma, and a STEAM diploma. And what these are ways which students can actually concentrate what they're learning into specific areas. And it acts as some people describe it as a major, some people describe it as a minor, but in a sense, they're taking our core curriculum and they're focusing a lot of their electives and some of those optional classes that they take into these areas. And so for students that are really interested in creative arts, it allows them to really develop a portfolio over the course of their time while at school. For students that are globally focused, this is both taking classes, but then also attending workshops or lectures outside of school and participating in different programs in order to round out that. And then for our STEAM, these students can actually choose a concentration here where they can decide, what's the area that they want to focus on. And this is a way in which it's sort of setting themselves up to have success if they may be applying to an engineering school or other science, or STEAM related programs when they're applying to college. And then Winterm, I feel a little funny talking about Winterm right now in the midst of a pandemic. I see Brian chuckling a little bit. So Winterm is our international travel program that in years past, I would say it happens every other year, every 2 years. Where our whole upper school shuts down for a week and students are basically off traveling around the world in past years, we've traveled as far as Japan and Vietnam. We've had students go to Italy. We've had students look at southern France and northern Italy in terms of an architecture and art history program. And so we send students around the globe. We also have some local programs as well for those that may not want to travel, with the idea of really exposing them to new things, as well as really finding a way to cement that into what our program is here at Brimmer. So those programs usually have some type of service learning component to it as well. Some of them are completely about service learning, and some of them just involve a day or so, but they all sort of are involved in sort of experiencing new places and learning about new cultures as they go through. Unfortunately, we've had to put winter on hold the last 2 years because of the pandemic, but it's really a core part of our program, and we're looking to bring it back as soon as we possibly can. And then right before I hand it over, the support programs at Brimmer, what you'll hear a little bit more maybe from Karen is, we have a math lab, which is staffed by an internal math teacher who works with students both as a drop-in as well as we assign people to the math lab. We have our writing center, which is staffed by our humanities teachers who help students in writing, and those could be humanities classes. And also we have students sometimes going down there for help with lab reports in terms of helping to structure that. And that works both as sort of helping students in the editing process, but also with the beginning part of brainstorming a paper, writing thesis statements, trying to figure out how to structure their work. We have a student-run peer tutoring program. So students that have been approved and apply to be peer tutors, and they work through with Karen on this. And those students actually will work with other students to help them in certain subject areas. We have our Tutoring Institute, which is a for-fee program where we help to connect families with tutors. Then we have our advisor program for that one-on-one support. And then our Gatorades program, which is a brand new program. So if you know people that have been at Brimmer in the past, you would not really hear them speaking about this. Our Gatorades program is a brand new program that's really about, it's a peer mentoring program between our 12th grade students and our 9th grade students, where we really have dived deeply into leadership training and developing a leadership training module and program for students. And so the Gatorades is one way in which they're doing this. So the students are really working with 9th graders in small groups. Every other week, they're meeting to help teach them about Brimmer, to answer questions, and to really build some connections across the grades as well. It's really a program we're really excited about. Theo might be able to tell you a little bit about it when he talks, because he happens to be one of our Gatorade mentors as well. And I think the next slide.
All right. So Theo, does it make sense to go to you if given that you're on? Karen, does that work?
That's fine.
Your time frame, and
Sure.
Josh sort of had a nice segue there to
Yep.
Theo, and it seemed like a logical next step. So Josh, thank you for that overview. I did put a message in the chat. If you want to type questions directly to me, if you have any, we will have some time hopefully after Theo and Karen for some Q&A before we hop into the admissions component. All right, Theo, over to you.
Awesome. Yeah, the Gatorade mentoring program is super cool. It's a new program. I think Miss Ream started it this year. And yeah, we work with the freshman grade and help them like transition into Brimmer, which is super cool. And there's actually a number of things, the problem solving class that I'm taking right now, and like Winthrop, I went to France and Italy, that are super cool. My transition to Brimmer from Carroll, Brimmer's definitely harder than Carroll. The transition was tough, but I would definitely say that the faculty helped me adjust, and you kind of get used to the course load, and there's so many ways to find help and support in the Brimmer community, whether it's going to the math lab, which I was there a lot freshman year, or the writing center. Those are super helpful, and the faculty there are really amazing. The coursework, so yeah, it's definitely harder, but I think the teachers are really great, and it's never overbearing, I would say. And it's always, I think that all the classes I'm taking right now are like super interesting. So you know, it is a lot, but I enjoy doing it. The teachers at Brimmer are super awesome because the classes, you can always ask questions and they'll take the time to answer them. Or if you want to meet with them one-on-one outside of class, they always try to make that work. And there's a bunch of ways to find success in the classroom, I found. And the more comfortable you are with self-advocating, the more open you are to talking to teachers, the more success I think you'll have at Brimmer. The students, like my fellow students, are also super helpful when taking classes. Brimmer's a very collaborative environment where we often like try to bring each other up and succeed together in classes. It's not a competitive environment, and teachers don't grade on curbs. So I think that leads to a bunch of really positive things. The expectations at Brimmer, you know, I mean, I'd say it's definitely an expectation to get involved and support the Brimmer community. I know I've tried a number of ways to get involved myself, whether that's in sports. This year I got picked to be soccer captain, which was super cool, or the Gatorade program. I also, with Miss Bernacki, I was able to start kind of a peer mentoring program between the lower and upper school, and also the lower school at Carroll. There's a bunch of Carroll alums that go to Brimmer. So we do last year we were able to do read alouds with lower school, second grade Carroll kids, which was super cool. This year, the scheduling is kind of difficult for that, but we're currently in the process of figuring something out for that. And graduation is the last bullet. Yeah, I mean, I'd say Brimmer from kind of the beginning and like the roots of like finding help to succeed in your classes to the college counseling class and preparing you for college. They kind of support you through all the way and do a really good job of teaching you everything you need to know up to and through that point of graduation.
Thanks, Theo.
Great, thanks. Sorry, Karen.
No, that's okay. I'm just going to jump right in because it's a good segue. So I started last year in a pandemic wearing masks. Half of the kids, you know, it was very hard for me to get to know many of the students. But Theo, I think even before school started, was literally or figuratively knocking on my door saying, "Hey, Miss Bernanke, I'm Theo. I want to tell you about this program I've been trying to start, and I really want to get this going. I want to give back. I learned how to read through Carroll, and I struggled with reading, and I want to make sure that kids who also struggle have mentors and can see that we can be successful." And so I think that was my first kind of, other than other things that I'll talk about, like setting up accommodation plans and making sure families were comfortable and making sure I knew where everybody was, that was the first thing that I did with Theo. And it helped me kind of get to know how students advocate for themselves and work together with partners and work with staff. And I don't know, it was just a really great introduction to the school. So I'm very sad to see that Theo's a senior this year and he's going to keep in touch, but we've got a whole year to work together. So this is great. So in learning support, so the academic services in the middle and upper school, so focusing on upper school, I would say that as the director, I'm really involved with you as potential families from the beginning of admissions all the way through graduation. I help the admissions team look at student files to determine, especially kids with learning differences, to determine whether or not, mostly what we can do to support a student, not whether or not, but what we can do to support a student when they come to Brimmer. And we look at the big picture, who the student is, what skills they come with, what skills they might need, what supports we can put in place even before they arrive to help them be successful. and then scaffold different introductions to different programs that we offer. And then, so a student who arrives here and has identified learning differences, dyslexia, there's a number of things that we look at, then I will work with the family to ensure that their accommodation, I develop an accommodation plan that's specifically for Brimmer students. Teachers have access to that plan. It assigns accommodations and recommendations for how to approach student learning in the class. It also gives a little summary of what that student looks like in a classroom so that they can be prepared to support them when they need to. And then as the years go on, I help families update those learning supports, find, annual neuropsychs that need to or want to be conducted. I'll also support families through interactions with the public school for IEPs and to transfer that information here. I do a lot of work with families. And then we do a lot of work all the way up through accommodations on standardized testing, just to make sure that kids get through the whole 4 years and they go on to the college of their choice. So while we're here in school, we have, as Josh mentioned, a number of supports. But we, as Theo mentioned, being a self-advocate is really the number one, I think, advantage to a student who comes particularly from a school like Carroll. It is a different experience. And we find that the students who come from Carroll who are able to identify as a student who needs support and wants support and is willing to have support, it really helps them a lot. So students who can advocate for themselves, understand their learning profile, and know how or are willing to build relationships with teachers, they're definitely the most successful students here. And as Theo mentioned, we have amazing staff and faculty. So it is very easy to access teachers. Teachers are approachable, they're visible. And so there's always conversations from my end. If I need to facilitate a conversation, it's just a reminder to meet with the student. I don't have to push. Students usually come with their own questions and their own goals that they want to work on. So that's really important. And then as we're building relationships, we provide this amazing space here in the library. And as Josh mentioned, within this center, kids are actively working right now with the math lab and the writing center. And we have tutors that support students here from outside, but they come in here and work with students during their open times that are in their schedule. So there's a lot of that going on. There's a lot of wonderful energy happening. For the accommodation plans, the typical things that we support are the extended times, the written assignments on keyboards, the calculators, reference cards for some students. And all of these accommodations are based off of conversations that I have with families and diagnoses and documented accommodations that are provided to us. And then we work, as the students get older, I'll sit with students and talk to them about their accommodation plan and adapt it and see what's working and what's not working. So again, I'm giving them some more advocacy to tell us what they need. The one thing that Brimmer, in general does not do is we do not necessarily provide modifications to curriculum. It doesn't mean that we won't have conversations with families and students around how to support them and how to tweak the expectations. But in general, the one thing that we really focus on more is the accommodations and the supports and providing extra and additional and resources and tools rather than modifying. And we can talk more about that on an individual basis if you want. I think we talked about the math lab support. It is, as we said, it could be by appointment or it could be drop-in. It could be drop-in every single time. It could be drop-in once a month. It could be drop-in right before a quiz. It could be drop-in to talk with Mr. Swartz about a quiz that happened and how to get a better grade the next time. So that's very fluid and very approachable. And the Writing Center, again, is also for students who would like some support on their writing. It's very non-judgmental. It's more about, have you thought about this? And here's another approach you can take. And I know that in the upper school, many of the teachers are actually giving kids extra credit for attending the Writing Center. So they get used to using that resource. Again, the Learning Center here is growing exponentially, which is amazing. We have teachers coming in and out. We have tutors coming in and out, students coming in and out. And it's just, it's creating a very neutral zone for students to receive support, whoever they are, wherever they come from, whatever they might need. This is just, it's just always available. And that's the approach that we take. We're very flexible. And we just work really well with students, and we try to be individualized. So these conversations are happening all the time. And the tutoring, so as Josh mentioned, it's a one-to-one fee-for-service program. So what we do is my counterpart in the lower school and I hire outside tutors. We vet them and we look for tutors that we specifically need to support our kids in their learnings, and we hire a group. I personally have hired 9 tutors from outside of the community that are working every day in our building with students, and we pair them. And the fee it goes through Brimmer, paying, and the tutors are paid. And you'll find that they're very high quality tutors, but you're not going to pay the market price that you might pay outside of our community. So you definitely get a bargain by using the resources that we have here. And I think the advantage of using a tutor through our program is that because the tutors are here in the building and working closely with me and the teachers, that the communication is more, it's more collaborative, and it's on point. It's, it's daily communication, and it's very accurate, and they become part of the Brimmer team. So, when and if you're here, I encourage you to look into that. And I think that's it. So I am excited to, answer any questions anytime and in your process.
Great. Thank you, Karen. Appreciate that. Yep. Theo and Josh as well. So as promised, what I thought we would do, we're well on schedule here, is we just threw a lot of information at you and want to make sure that you have a chance to ask questions about anything that you just heard. I'm looking at the clock. I want to make sure that Theo gets back to class. So if anybody has a question for Theo in particular, we are a school, so I should prioritize class time first, I suppose. Theo may want to hang out with us longer, but so if anybody has a question, feel free to put it in the chat. It's also a small enough group. If you want to unmute yourself and ask a question of Theo or Karen or Josh, you should feel free to do so. And then I'll address one question that came up in the chat so far. So there's a question here for you. A couple questions, Theo. You're popular. This is great. They're coming in here. What advice would you offer some incoming students from Carroll starting Brimmer? It's a great question. And you're on mute, Theo, just as a reminder. As you're thinking about that answer, just yeah.
I'd say reach out to as many teachers as you can, and just get involved. If you hear an opportunity, just join it, because the chances are it's gonna be super cool. And then you might be with that same teacher for 4 years or something. So just right when you get in, just really jump into everything you can, I guess.
Great advice. Theo, if you're comfortable sharing, would you be able to tell the group what kind of supports you've taken advantage of at Brimmer, be it the Writing Center or the Math Lab or tutoring, anything of that nature?
Yeah, so the Math Lab was very helpful for Algebra 2. Mr. Schwartz is amazing. He runs the Math Lab. He's always available to help students, and he does a great job. The writing center is often done with like humanities teachers, and I'll go there a lot because in my English class, you have a requirement to go to the writing center so that you can improve your writing and better improve like your arguments for your papers. So I've definitely gone above and beyond with like going to the writing center so that as many of my papers as I can be as high quality as I can get them.
Thank you, Theo. So there's a question here, which is probably I can address, as well as Josh, and perhaps Karen, if you have something to add, please feel free to weigh in. A great question about the transition experience as a 10th grader. And obviously there are perhaps others in the group today that are in the C9 program who have questions about coming to Brimmer as a 10th grader. Other folks are looking for 9th grade. We realize there's probably both. But looking at that transition between from a academic, social, peer teacher mentoring perspective. And what I'll start off by saying is we do see applicants, the majority of our Carroll applicants each year, and we'll go into numbers in a little bit, but tend to be 9th grade with a handful looking at 10th. I'm looking at my Carroll colleagues here, maybe 2 to 3 sort of C9 students per year. That sort of seems and feels right. Certainly have had a lot of success with students coming out of C9. I would say that our students, if we were talking with other Brimmer students who went to Carroll that came in as 10th, they'd say they felt well prepared for the 10th grade curriculum and program here, and they certainly have done well. I can think of one student in particular who's my advisee and has been since 10th, who has just thrived here and takes advantage of support. I would say that this particular student is just a wonderful self-advocate, and she would attribute those skills or that skill set to Carroll, and then certainly continuing on and serving her well here at Brimmer. So whether it's utilizing me as an advisor, whether it's meeting with her teachers one-on-one, going to the writing center or math lab, like Theo mentioned some of these great supports that are built into the program. She, from day one, I don't think I've ever had to remind her or follow up with her about a meeting with a teacher. It just sort of happens. Again, I think she built that, she built that familiarity and habit during her years at Carroll. So, certainly we bring in on a given year between 3 and 6 10th grade students. So if you were coming from Carroll as a 10th grader, you'd be one of a handful, not alone, and generally bring in 3 or 4 juniors as well. So while the majority of our kids come as 9th graders in the high school, certainly 10th and 11th as well. Josh, you want to chime in just maybe from the sort of mentoring piece or the academic support?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would just echo what Brian said, that I think the students that are coming to us from 9th grade at Carroll into our 10th grade program have really been successful because they're coming with those strong skills that Karen was talking about before, the strong self-advocacy skills that they're getting there, that they're really learning about themselves and they're ready for a high school program. They tend to utilize some of those support programs that Karen mentioned before. And I think being every year we do, and I'm sure Brian would address this a little bit more when he talks about the admissions piece, but every year we do have, a fair number of new 10th graders that come in and new 11th graders that come into the school. And so even coming into Brimmer in that entry point is you're not the only person that's coming to the school, which I think is helpful as well. And so I would just echo that the students are doing well. They tend to sort of transition really easily to the program, and then they are flying high just like all of our other students are, which is great.
Karen, anything else?
I was just going to add that, in the beginning, even the first couple of weeks of school, there's so much conversation because we're a small school around individual students. We do have a student support team that meets weekly, and we often at the beginning of the year talk about the new students and how they're acclimating and what they need. So you'll find in the first 3 weeks of school, we might juggle schedules or might recommend supports or require supports. And we're constantly engaging in conversations to make sure those kids are doing well. So we're watching them in a positive way, making sure that they're comfortable. So they don't just pop in here and then they disappear. We're very on top of, because we're building a community. So we want to make sure that they've jumped into the community and feeling good.
Thanks, Karen. I'm just looking, I think I've cleared all the questions out of the chat. Are there other questions for Theo, Karen, or Josh? And of course, Karen, Josh, you're more than welcome to stay on for the admissions portion, but I thought out of respect for your time, if you wanted or needed to move to another meeting or space, you should feel free to do so.
Karen, could I ask a question maybe on behalf of some of the families? Is
Sure.
it possible if a family's interested and not sure they're the right fit, could they or should they send their neuropsych in advance to look at or send it in with their application?
Brian, I think I'm going to defer to Brian.
I'll cover that in a little bit, because that's actually a note I had to myself about certain neuropsych submission, what that looks like, what the process looks like, timing, everything like that. So we'll cover that in more depth. A question just came in here in the chat about learning a little bit more about makerspace or STEM activities at the school, opportunities for hands-on learning. Josh, do you want to, that's kind of up your alley. Do you want to?
Yeah, sure. So up in, hopefully if you haven't, you'll have a chance to tour the building this year, because we're having tours back on campus again. But we have a makerspace, which is fully equipped with laser cutters, 3D printers, vinyl cutters, a CNC mill. And then we have a number of different classes that utilize that space as sort of the core portion of their course. I talked about problem solving through design and digital fabrication a little bit earlier, but we also have our STEAM class as well, and a number of other courses that you can find in our curriculum guide. And then our director of innovation design also works closely with other teachers that are interested in finding new ways to bring that design element into their courses. And so what's actually happened over the past few years since we built this space is that we see teachers starting to offer more often different ways in which students can do projects. So they may open it up and say, okay, you can come up with a project for this topic. And then it may be a paper, it may be a presentation. Then we also have students that are up in the makerspace building different things. And so that happened in 9th grade with the students do a Chaucer exhibition, and some students started using the 3D printer to design models of parts in which they were going to talk about during those presentations. And then Ms. Lee also works with those teachers that I talked about, sort of designing ways to put that makerspace into their coursework. So our geometry class in 9th grade is a really good example. And if you walk into the school, you'll see some of those artifacts. Right now, over our main stairwell is these really cool balanced out chandeliers, which students actually take what they're learning in geometry and apply that in real life. And they use our makerspace and the laser cutter to take those designs from their geometry concepts and build these pieces. And every year those pieces look a little bit different. So you'll see some lanterns up in the innovation space. You'll see that chandelier type of piece over our main stairwell. And those types of projects extend out to other areas. Some of our world languages teachers have been doing that as well. And I believe our 9th grade history classes are also going to be doing some work up there this year. So as much as possible, teachers are looking for different types of ways to assess students. So I think this is sort of building off of what we were talking about before, is that it's not sort of a one size fits all and all assessments look exactly the same. I think teachers in general are trying to find different ways to assess students so that they can get a good understanding of the learning that they've achieved during that time.
Great, thank you, Mr. Goodell. We do have a couple more questions, and I just didn't know, Theo, I'm just looking at you too. If you need to hop off, feel free. I think these are all questions that we can take. If you want to just any final words or.
Yeah, it was a pleasure talking to Carroll families again. I remember when I was at Carroll and looking at high schools, and Brimmer is a really great place. I really recommend looking into it more. I'm also a member of the STEAM diploma program, and Mr. Hardman runs that. And I've got to do some really amazing things with that too. Like last summer for my internship, I did a 3-week horseback riding trip with Knowles in Wyoming, which was super cool. So I definitely recommend doing a diploma program. And again, it was super fun talking to you guys.
Thank you, Theo. Appreciate you joining us.
Thanks, Theo.
All right, there's a couple other questions here that I'll take a stab at, and then Josh, if you could sort of fill in some blanks here, different perspectives, that would be great. The first one, and I'm going to try to kind of merge a couple, but one question came in about college matriculation and sort of pandemic realities to that. Josh is much more intimately involved in that process, but I would say, obviously, just like schools had to upend their processes, independent schools last year for the pandemic, colleges did the same. Many went test optional, deadlines changed, they couldn't rely on international student populations the way they could in the past. So numbers changed, and acceptances were better than they had been in previous years. And Brimmer, we had a wonderful year, I think, by any measure. The lists of schools represented are wonderful. I think they didn't necessarily change. The types of schools that our students are applying to did not change because of the pandemic. I would say, some may have benefited from larger acceptance rates, but the nature of the universities or colleges that kids were applying to did not change at all. We have a variety of schools, small and large, that our kids like to attend. Josh, anything else on college or pandemic, counseling or other aspects?
I think that, the work that we do with students is just like, there's a reason why people chose Brimmer as their high school. There's a reason why they may choose the college that they eventually attend and why to apply to. And so I think our college counseling team is really focused on helping people figure out what the right fit for them is. So sometimes that's some of the most competitive schools in the country, and sometimes those are other schools based off of sort of a student's profile and what makes the most sense for them. And I think that really for us is around, we want students to have been successful here at Brimmer, and we want them to be successful in college so that they can go on to have the jobs that they're hoping for. And I think the message that we've actually been, I'll share this briefly here, the message that I think I may have been overusing it, but I haven't shared it with you all yet, is a message that we've been sharing recently with some of our families is a quote that I ran across recently by Adam Grant, who's an organizational psychologist, who shared that sometimes we have the right directions to the wrong destination. And I think when we start thinking about that idea of like putting things on autopilot, that we have these directions and we have this vision of where we're supposed to end up, and that sometimes as life progresses, things just change and shift. And if we always sort of keep trying to follow those same directions and not adjust to go to a new place, we end up getting to where we thought we were supposed to be, and it's not the right spot anymore. And so that, I think, in many ways is sort of what we're striving for, is to help students understand that they have goals in mind and we want to help them reach their goals and get to where they hope to be. But at the same time, it's okay to change where you're trying to head as you learn more about yourself and what you want to do in life.
Thanks, Josh. Another question here about the daily schedule, which I think Josh covered a little bit, but I will just say we start at 7:50 every morning. Classes start at 8, but 7:50 is when school starts, either with homeroom, morning meeting, or advisory. Those rotate throughout the course of the week. We end the day at 3:10. There are 70, 50, and 40-minute blocks. Each core subject meets 4 times per week for a total of 200 minutes. And we run a 5-day schedule, but when courses meet throughout the course of the week changes. So if you have biology first thing on Monday, you could have at the end of the day on Tuesday, a skip day on Wednesday, and then middle of the day on Thursday and Friday. So you're not always sort of stuck with the same thing first thing in the morning. If you're not a morning person, that's a good thing. The average student would have, Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, but 3 to 8 study halls, depending on the number of electives as a 9th grader, 5 to 8, you generally, it just depends on how many electives the student's taking, but a minimum of 3, I would assume is
I think it's more like a minimum of 5.
Minimum of 5, okay. So plenty of time. So the question was, do students have time to meet with teachers during the day? The short answer is absolutely. And I'm seeing Karen shake her head. That could be during a study hall, mutually agreed upon time before, after, during school, during lunch, during morning break. Ample time built into the structure of a student and faculty day to connect with one another and meet. It does get a little, back to the sort of self-advocacy skills. Right before this meeting, I was emailing back and forth with a new advisee from Carroll. in ninth grade who we couldn't meet yesterday, and just sort of, try to figure out time to meet between sports and my schedule and their schedule. And it's, that's back to that sort of advocacy skills of making it happen. In terms of typical homework, does depend on the learner. We've always sort of said around 2 hours or so, but that, of course, varies. A student like Theo, as you heard from earlier, is going to get a lot of work done during the course of his day. He's going to be resourceful. He may have an hour one night and 2.5 the next. It does sort of change reading fluency, you name it. I've always been a slow reader in my life. That English assignments took longer than math or science. So it just sort of depends on the student. But our objective is not to crush students with volume of work. Excellent. All right, I don't see anything else in the chat, and I'm wary of time here as well. And I'm gonna make sure that we get some admissions questions as well, or process. Anything else for the academic program, support, daily schedule? Josh, Karen, I so appreciate you joining us today and chiming in all topics here. I should mention before they sign off that Karen and Josh both sit on our admission committees. Will be intimately familiar with student profiles and the process. So we absolutely approach this as a team. It's not an admissions office making decisions in isolation. So administration and academic support are absolutely included, and we'll get to know your children very very well.
Very well. Thank you so much. It was nice having you all here, and I look forward to hopefully reading your applications or learning more about your student.
Thank you, Josh. We appreciate it.
I copy that.
Thanks, Karen. It was so nice to see you both.
Thank you all. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much to those folks. And I believe my colleague Chad in admissions here also had to hop off for an 11 o'clock interview. So what I'll do, and a great question just came in the chat, which I'll get to in a moment. But in terms of admissions process, some highlights. The good news first, right? There's really no bad news, really. But in terms of last year versus this year, we are back to some semblance of normal, right? Last year's process was entirely virtual. It did work, and it worked well. And I would attribute the success of that, to folks like Stacy and Cece and Charlene who are on this call, partnering with schools to make sure that students and families had advocates and that they were being informed. Processes changed throughout the course of the year last year for many schools, and it was sort of a moving target. Most schools this year are doing some level of in-person visitation or events, assessments. So we are in that sort of hybrid mode, I would call it. So while our teachers are sort of not familiar with Zoom any longer, admissions still lives in Zoom through much of our day. We are doing both in-person and Zoom interviews, and I think we'll continue to do Zoom interviews well beyond the pandemic. Those have served us well. It's really an individual choice, a family choice, a student choice. We this year do have a vaccine requirement for in-person interviews, given that you're with an interviewer in a smaller space for an extended period of time. But no vaccination requirement for tours. So those are happening at all grade levels in our school. Of course, just given the sort of current vaccination requirements, most of our middle school interviews are happening on Zoom. Upper school have been favoring in person. It does not matter to us. We get a lot of questions around what is better, what is preferred. It's really about you. I can point out many advantages or pros and cons to each. We love and want families to do whatever is most comfortable for them. And if that means that if it's a 2-parent family and Zoom is the only way for both parents to hop on to an interview, great. If you haven't had a chance to visit campus and that's your chance, that's great too. So it does not matter. We're probably seeing a 60-40 split, but slightly favoring on campus. We did do something this year, which is a bit of an experiment, which is sort of uncouple or decouple the tour from the interview, which I won't go into the reasons why, but there are lots of different reasons. And we are learning and getting data as we go on that. So it is possible to come to our school and just do a tour and then decide whether an interview is the right next step for you and your family. And that those are happening in small groups. Some will be individual, some will be in small groups at a variety of times throughout the course of the day and throughout the week. We have not filled any of those so that we have tons of offerings. You can sign up for the tours right on Ravenna. You don't have to reach out to our office to do a tour. I should mention that Brimmer is on Ravenna, if I didn't do that earlier. Like many of my peer day schools, that's a pretty popular platform. So you will need a profile for Ravenna. If you're looking at boarding, you might also be on Gateway as well, or SAO. But the tours to book, we did shift during the pandemic to event management through Ravenna, which has served us well. I'll pause there for a second before I get into testing, academic stuff. Any questions around the interview or tour? All right, excellent. So in terms of application steps, application process, you will work obviously in close connection with your placement team at Carroll and who know our school really well. And I want to just take a moment to just sort of highlight that. I can't think of, there's a handful of schools that we do presentations like this. I can't think of an office or school that we work more closely with throughout the course of the process. And that, they are trusted advisors to all of the students with whom they work and families. And I think any questions, obviously you can reach out to us at any time, but Carroll knows our school really well. They know what we do well and don't do. And part of the purpose and intent on having Karen join us today is to really highlight sort of who we are, what kind of support we offer, what kind of support we do not offer. And they will be your best advocate in terms of, is this the right place for your student? Or another environment, perhaps a better fit. But we work with them throughout the course of the season and are in close communication. So, I just want to sort of highlight that as I'm staring at Zoom names and pictures on my screen here, and make sure that they're sort of trusted resources as well. In terms of testing, we did last year, like many schools, we went test optional. I would say that was an interesting process. This was not a decision that was made lightly, nor was it done with years of cumulative and longitudinal data, the way that colleges made those decisions, right? It was done for health and safety reasons, as opposed to us believing that test optional was the way to go for our school. And we had data and research to support that. So I have gotten a lot of questions over the course of the last year and a half. We saw, as you might imagine, a variety of profiles coming out of last year, a variety of report cards and transcripts from the spring of 2020. We have students who were not in school from March of 2020 through all of last year in different communities, never setting foot in a classroom. So transcripts and report cards look different. We did find ourselves sort of missing the consistent data point of testing, regardless of the span of test scores, of having one piece that sort of felt normal, felt consistent, and that was true of all applicants, right? All schools are not equal, and report cards are not equal, or transcripts. And so that experience and teacher evaluation or teacher recommendations from independent schools were very different than those from public schools. So we have gone back to that requirement. However, and I see a question here in the chat as well. So we were going back to an SSAT requirement. We found what I call one of many COVID keepers. I like that terminology. We all have those as schools and as organizations, as workplaces. We allowed families to submit a neuropsych in lieu of test scores last year, and learned a lot about students as a result. We've almost always gotten neuropsychs from Carroll students, so this is not really applicable to this group, but we will always learn more from a neuropsych than we will from an ISE or an SSAT, and that really gets into the learning style of each student. So we have moved to an environment where we will accept a neuropsych in lieu of an SSAT, assuming that we feel that it's a comprehensive battery and providing a summary recommendations that would give us information about your student. So we are more than welcome to accept that in lieu of SSAT. or both. Many families will submit both, and that's fine too. From our perspective and Karen's perspective, the more the merrier. It gives us more data to work with. I would say, as your Carroll team would say as well, the neuropsych has to be within 3 years. There was a question earlier, either in the chat or in person, about can you submit a neuropsych in advance? And at certain times of the year, the answer is yes. At certain times of the year, the answer is no. Once we get into sort of the heart of the admissions cycle and Karen has started reviewing files, she doesn't have time to do the sort of pre-read or review. It takes her a good hour plus to thoughtfully review every neuropsych that's provided and take some notes. Those notes become accommodation plans later. So she sort of double dips there. And if that student were to be accepted and enroll at our school, she's already done some of that work. So it's an incredible amount of time that she takes. So when we get a neuropsych in September, October, even in early November, we might say, hey, yeah, we can take a look and give you some feedback about sort of going through with the process or not. But as the year goes on and we're sort of in the thick of it, it's just an hours in the day kind of conversation. So happy to do it when we can. We get a neuropsych in the summer and somebody's wondering, is this a good fit? Absolutely. Once the school year gets going and everybody's busy, it's just hard to do that when somebody hasn't even applied. So I hope you understand the bandwidth issue on that one. I know we've gone over, so I apologize to my Carroll colleagues here for that, but great questions and great topic so far. Are there any final questions, things I didn't cover? The interview, I should mention, Chad was on the call earlier. Chad, we've restructured our office a little bit. Chad is new at Brimmer this year as director of upper school admissions. We have a separate director for each level. There are 3 of us who do upper school interviews. So you would either see Chad, myself, or Mallory Nye, who does upper school interviews as well, be it on Zoom or in person. So in terms of next steps, I would encourage you to reach out. We did just finish a full week. I know some of you joined us last week for our open house event series. We do not have any immediate events on the books. I think the next one's currently in early January, but we will be populating our events calendar as we go and sort of get a feel for what is needed and or desired. But definitely visit campus. And, that a great next step, be it for a campus tour or interview, and the campus tours are done by student tour guides. All right. Charlene, CC, anything I didn't cover that?
No, you did a wonderful job. I think
I printed no notes, so I'm working on going a little.
That was
That's impressive.
Yes. We greatly appreciate your time this morning and your team, your whole team, and bringing Theo on. Clearly, you have continued with his incredible success as a student, and you can see he just is thriving and loving everything Brimmer, which is wonderful. And you've been incredibly informative to our families, and we thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Well, it was wonderful to see everybody on the call today. And again, if we can answer questions individually, feel free to I'll just put my email here in the chat. Feel free to reach out directly or to our office. We do function as a team. So anybody that picks up is happy to take your call or email. I'll just do that real quick so people have it. All right, with that, I'm going to sign off. I have somebody waiting for me at 11 as well. So I'm going to duck out here. Great to see you. Stay dry out there, folks. And
you as well. Take care, Brian. And thank you to everyone at Brimmer.
Thanks a lot. Take care.